Both COVID and racism are two very ugly diseases that our students will be struggling to unpack this year. Their understanding is dependent upon you and how you teach your social emotional learning. There's no doubt we'll be teaching social emotional learning this year in ways that we could never have imagined. It's incumbent upon us as educators to make sure that we embed anti-racist work within our teaching of social emotional learning. Being an anti-racist educator means that you take specific actions to work toward dismantling the ideas, the systems, and the spaces that promote racism, whether that promotion is intentional or not. I want my students to be members of a society that is completely intolerant of racism. And because of that, it's my responsibility to understand and accept that true social emotional learning, that deep, rigorous social emotional learning cannot exist in the absence of anti-racist work. This is an opportunity for us to teach our children how we want the world to be, how the world should be. And I'd like you to join me on this journey of anti-racist work and social emotional learning. Black Indigenous students of color tend to be marginalized in educational spaces by way of things like disparities in disciplinary practices, curriculum that silences the voices of minority people and marginalized people, policies and procedures that don't best serve our minority students. Many times, those policies and procedures ignore racial trauma that comes in the form of daily microaggressions that our Black Indigenous students of color tend to deal with on a daily basis. Those microaggressions can come in the form of educator assumptions about a student's family, or a student's intelligence, their community, their family, or even things like their clothes and their hair. Consider that your Black students felt anxiety and fear when they watched the murder of George Floyd. They felt that anxiety and that fear in a much different way than their white peers. That's just one example, but unfortunately, there are a million more reasons why anti-racist work needs to be embedded in our delivery of social emotional learning. How do we do anti-racist work in our schools? What does that look like in your classroom? What would that look like in my counseling office? What would that look like district-wide if I'm an anti-racist educator? Embedding those anti-racist ideas and ideals into my social emotional learning. That task might seem very big to you. It might seem difficult, unyielding, and even daunting. But you're no stranger to doing hard work. You can do hard things. First, do some reflection. Ask yourself, who am I as an educator? How does who I am as an educator fall in line with the way that I teach social emotional learning? Next, interrupt and confront racism. When you see it, squash it. An example might be, perhaps you heard name shaming in your school. Maybe children name shamed another child. To be an anti-racist educator, it's more than telling them to stop. It's confronting those students about why they think that's okay, teaching them why it's not okay, and working to make sure that they never do that again. From your educational space in your school, you can do this work. From the smallest scale of confronting people about inappropriate jokes to larger scales, such as evaluating your classroom library and your classroom walls. What do they look like? Are they representative of all of your students? Are they representative of the entire country? You can advocate. Advocate for more fair and equitable policies and procedures with things like discipline, attendance, remote learning, busing, access to education, or whatever else you see, whatever else your students are experiencing. And finally, teach and encourage social emotional learning experiences with cultural competency. If you don't know about your students and their backgrounds, learn about them. Use their cultural experiences to help you to teach them. Remember that your students' friendships, decision-making, self-management, and the way they view the world and the way that they conceptualize everything that's going on in the world today has a basis in their culture. We need to respect that, but we also have an opportunity to use that to teach our children how to make the world better. Educators have such a unique opportunity right now. We get to make sure that we deliver social emotional learning lessons and opportunities to our students that are embedded within anti-racist work. One cannot and should not exist without the other. You can master this when you're open to having a journey of learning experiences that allow you to teach anti-racism and social emotional learning to your students at the same time. You'll be on your way to becoming an accomplished teacher, educator, or counselor in anti-racist work.